Next in our video series, we discover tips and tricks on successful historic district and landmark commissions. Katie Gorman shares her insight from Galveston, Texas, and how they handle cases and the applications with their review board.
Hello, my name is Katie Gorman. I'm the Historic Preservation Officer for the City of Galveston, Texas, and I'm here today to talk about successful commission management. The historic districts in the Galveston landmarks are overseen by the Galveston Landmark Commission. That's a volunteer board. It consists of 7 members and 2 alternates. They're appointed by City Council. Each position has a corresponding qualification to ensure that we have broad representation from people within the historic district and then also at-large members of the community. The Galveston Landmark Commission, the powers are established by the Land Development Regulations, which is the city's zoning regulations, and their main duty is to work to protect, enhance, and promote landmarks and districts of historical importance in the city. What they do is review exterior alterations, demolition requests, and new construction in our districts. They meet twice a month, the first and third Mondays, and in 2019 they reviewed 84 cases. So the basic beginning block of successful case management of the Landmark Commission is the application form. The application form is your first introduction to the request and provides the basic information that's needed. So here's an example on the screen of the City of Galveston's Landmark Commission application for the Certificate of Appropriateness. If you don't have a form, your first step is to develop one. And what you really want it to do is to capture basic information. You need to know the property address, contact information of the applicant. Email, I find, is the best way for corresponding for record keeping. We need to know the description of the request and then provide the applicant with a checklist of required items. You should review your forms regularly. Include a revision date. We keep it on the lower right-hand corner to identify the most recent version of the form. Make sure everyone's using the correct version. You should remove any unnecessary information. If the form's too complicated, then that can intimidate the applicant. Keep their forms fresh and looking up to date. We revamped our forms about 5 years ago. We simplified the form, we removed unnecessary information, and we added the meeting schedule to the top of the form. The meeting schedule was kept on another sheet of paper, giving the applicant several things that they needed to keep up with, and now all the information that they need to make their application is all on one form. Once you've received the application, the next step is a completeness review. And a thorough completeness review is vital to a successful case. You need to be sure that all the information needed by the Commission has been provided. It's best to review the application before officially accepting it. People can submit in person, by mail, or electronically. And if you're accepting applications in person, it's best to have the customer wait while you go through the application and make sure everything's there. If there's information that's missing, it should be documented, and that documentation provided to the applicant. On the screen, we have, on the left-hand side, our incomplete application form. It's very straightforward. It documents the address and the reason why the application has been deemed incomplete. So you want to be sure that you're not just telling the applicant that the application is incomplete, but telling them what it is that they are missing. You should also provide this documentation in writing and retain a copy for yourself so that you have proof that the application was submitted but found to be incomplete and returned to the applicant. And for submissions that are done by mail, you can fill out this form, make a copy for yourself, and submit it back to the applicant, and the same by email. The next step is preparing the case for the Commission and developing the staff report. What we do is prepare a thing we call the summary. And we have on the screen on the right-hand side our checklist for case management. That goes through each important step in the case management process and to make sure that all of the steps that are required are completed. So here is an example of what we call the case summary, and that is a written document that includes the case number, the address, legal description, the description of the request, who the applicant is, who the property owner is, and what meeting date is the application going to. This is prepared by the case manager and reviewed by the historic preservation officer, and it's always a good idea to get another set of eyes early on with case details. The summary provides documentation and verification of the most important aspects of a case. You want to make sure that you've got the request correct and that you have the address right, the applicant right. All of that very basic information needs to be verified. The next step is to review the application materials again. You've been through it in the completeness application review stage, but at this stage you're really getting into it and you're making sure that everything's there that the commission's going to need to understand the project. And if anything's missing, then contact the applicant with any questions and any requests for more information. After you have a thorough understanding of the request, then the next step is to perform a site visit. The applicant may have provided photographs, but they might not have provided enough information in the photographs, so it's a good idea to go out on site and to see the location for yourself. And on the screen we have an example of a case that came before the Landmark Commission, made the application for new solar panels. And when we went out to do the site visit, lo and behold, we found that the solar panels had already been installed. So the site visit allowed us to make sure that the building division was informed of the violation and all the proper stop work orders were issued. The next step would be to review the design standards. In Galveston's case, we have a document called the Design Standards for Historic Properties that provides a lot of guidance for property owners, staff members, and the commission for reviewing cases. And so in this case, I've provided on the screen just the cover of the design standards and then also an example of the kind of guidance that it provides. So for solar panels, in our example, we have a nice chart that shows the preferred location, acceptable location, and gives some more guidance. So it's very important that you go to your documentation, if it's the design standards, if you use the Secretary of Interior standards, if you have zoning regulations that address historic regulation, and read it specifically with this case in mind. And don't rely on your memory of the code. You need to make sure that you are referencing the codes so as not to make a mistake, and to cite in the staff report how the code applies or doesn't apply. So I've provided here an example of our staff reports and what they look like and the kind of documentation that is included. On the first page, the gray box contains the most important information just at a glance. This is really just a summary of what the request is. It includes the address, the applicant, what the request is, what the staff is recommending, and who the contact person is if you have additional questions. On the second page, we start with more detailed information. We include a background section if necessary, expand on the description of the request, and then cite the appropriate design standards. We include the design standards verbatim so that it's clear to everyone what section of the code the staff is referring to. The fourth page, which is on the right-hand side of the screen, includes the conformance section in which staff explains how the request does or does not conform to the standards, and then staff's recommendation. We divide the recommendation into two parts: specific conditions and standard conditions. Within the specific conditions section, we provide recommendations, if necessary, on how to make the case better conform to the design standards. In this example, using the solar panels, the recommendation was to relocate some of the panels to a different place on the roof. The standard conditions are the same for all cases and cover things like future changes to the approval, requirements of a building permit, timeline for completion, and the appeals process. On the final page, we have a place for signatures indicating who the case manager was and the historic preservation officer. Before the staff report is finalized, it's submitted to the historic preservation officer, to myself, for review. If you're on a staff where you're the only person with historic experience, then you could submit to a trusted associate for a review. Even if they don't have the technical knowledge to review the recommendation, they can review for typos and clarity. It's always a good idea to have somebody else have another set of eyes on your report before it goes out to the commission, so that you make sure that it's accurate and it says what you want it to say clearly. Okay, so once the staff report is completed, then we move into meeting preparation. And it's fairly important for you as a staff member to prepare all parties who are involved in the meeting. And that includes the commissioners, the staff members, the legal staff if they attend your meetings, and the applicant. You should do this by establishing deadlines for the staff report completion and stick to it. Provide enough time for everybody to review the packet and ask questions. Our goal for packet completion and agenda publication is the Wednesday before the meeting, which is held on Mondays. We send our packets electronically to our commissioners, so our delivery time is instantaneous. If you have to mail your packets or depend on people coming to pick them up, then make sure you factor that timeline into your consideration. Always provide the staff report to the applicant as soon as possible and familiarize the applicant with the process. Let them know what's expected of them at the meeting, if they need to give a presentation, or if they can just say that they're here for questions. And we really try to remember that the applicant may come to the commission once in their lives, and they really need to feel comfortable about what it is that is expected of them. And my motto for all meetings is no surprises. The worst thing that an applicant can say at a meeting is, I haven't seen the staff report, or I didn't know the staff was making that recommendation. So it's really vital that the applicant receive all the information that they need in time for them to be prepared. At the meeting, one of our responsibilities is to set up the meeting room, make sure it's comfortable for everybody. We arrive at least 15 minutes early. We set up the meeting room, we put out the name tags and the packets, and provide water and snacks if we think it's going to be a long meeting. You should always test the electronics, make sure the microphone's working, any displays that you use, and the recording equipment. Recordings of meetings is really important if there's an appeal, or unfortunately if something goes to a court case, you need to have a really solid documentation of what happened at the meeting. If anything starts to malfunction in the middle of the meeting, it's really your responsibility to step up, and even if you have to interrupt somebody and say, I'm sorry, I need to fix this, I need to fix the microphone, the recording's not working, make sure the meeting's paused until all of the electronic problems are worked out. I think it's a good idea to provide a hard copy of the agenda for the public so they have something to pick up and reference while they're in the meeting room. I like to greet the applicants and review procedures with them, and that can just be as simple as saying, hello, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, did you get your staff report? Do you have any questions for me? And let them know when it's time for them. I like to say, you're first on the agenda. The chair will ask you to come forward after the staff report is read. Just make sure that you reinforce what their role is at the meeting. And then when it's time to start, I just tell the chair, oh, it's 4 o'clock, and we're ready to go if you are. Just let them know that the staff is ready if they're ready to proceed. And then the next thing that happens is the meeting starts and you do the presentation of the cases. And it's really important to have a consistent method of presenting the staff report and sticking with that. This outlines here our method, and that is that the staff does a report. We don't read the report word for word. We give a general overview so that people in the room can have an idea of what the case is about, but we don't go into all of the details. What we do read word for word are the specific recommendations that we're making. Other than that, we're just providing an overview. Then we show photographs to the commission, and the commission is then given the opportunity to ask any questions that they have of the staff. After that's over, then the applicant, it's time for them to present or be asked questions, and then it's time for the public hearing, and that is when members of the public are able to come forward and speak. And after that, the chair closes the public hearing. The applicant is giving a chance to rebuttal if there's been anything in the public comment that they would like to respond to. And then the chair returns the request to the commission and asks for a motion before discussion can begin. After the motion and the second, the commission has discussion until they get ready for a vote. And after the vote, the chair should declare the outcome of the vote so that everybody in the room knows what happened. And that can be just saying the motion passes unanimously, or the vote was 6 in favor and 2 in opposition, the motion passes. The most important takeaways for case presentation is consistency. Keep to the same procedure for each case. You want to treat everybody exactly the same way. And don't move back and forth between sections of the case, because that can be very confusing to the public. And also enforce speaking limits if they are present. We have a speaking limit of 3 minutes per person, and it's very important that you not let one person go over and then enforce it for another. You have to treat everybody the same way. After the meeting, the first thing you should do is document the action of the commission. We do that in 2 ways. We do a letter to the applicant that specifies exactly what the commission has made in their motion, what they've decided, and any conditions that were applied to the case. We call that an action letter, and we try to send that out to the applicant the next day, but definitely within 5 to 10 business days. And then we also do minutes for the commission, so you need to keep detailed notes during the commission meeting, and always do your minutes very soon after the meeting so your memory doesn't fade. In cases of denial, ensure that the applicant is informed of any of the appeals process, and make sure that that is given to them in writing so that you have documentation that they knew that they had the ability to appeal, especially if there's a time frame, a limited time frame for them to file an appeal. And then follow up on deadlines and timelines. So as soon as something's approved and is approved with a deadline, then I put it on my calendar and make sure that I have a calendar reminder. So my final thoughts on successful commission management is to be consistent. Like I said earlier, it's really important to treat everybody the same way. To recognize staff's role, which is we think of as shepherds. It's our role to get you through the process as an applicant, and it's our role to make sure that the commission meeting goes smoothly. When you're making your recommendation, always go back and read the standards, and don't rely on your memory, because memories can be very faulty. And then don't be afraid to ask for help. There are wonderful resources out there, especially like the Louisiana Trust, who's hosting this presentation, and the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions. And that is a group that's devoted specifically to the work of preservation commissions. And I'm always here to answer any questions that you have. My contact information is on the screen. And thank you very much.